Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here, honestly. I'll steal someone else's words to say I'm really humbled to be here. It's quite fantastic for many reasons. One of the reasons is that, I'm presenting on behalf of a full team of hundreds of people that are scattered throughout the world. And it seemed like I have the burden to show it to you, like if I had done it myself, whereas I'm terrible at it, about everything that's drawing or numeric. Anyhow, I'm really psyched to be able to present you some of the work that we've done in the last couple of years. So we don't really want to talk about me so much, but I'm part of a huge team. I've been at Ubisoft for over 8 years now, so I studied history, and I felt like I didn't really belong in the academic field when I finished. I had worked in museums before as a guide. I really liked everything that was very visual, and I was just very lucky, really, to see that like 2 weeks before I was finishing university, Ubisoft was looking to hire a historian for a 3-month contract. And so I immediately called and said, all right, I want in, what do I have to do? And so they had me to go through 3 interviews and then the 3-month contract that I actually didn't really like. It was hard. I had never seen something that was that hard because I was coming from the academic field. I had to learn everything about production. So everything that we've seen in the last 2 presentations before us is pretty much what it looks like to make a video game like Assassin's Creed. So a lot of research, a lot of process involving a lot of people, a lot of technology, and over the top of that, a lot of the main goal of creating a game like Assassin's Creed is really to create an entertaining game. So it's a fine balance between historicity and actually making a game that's fun. That's what people want. So, Assassin's Creed, in a nutshell, what it is, it's an action-adventure game that you can play, and it's not exactly a travel through time. Narratively, in the game, you play a person in the present day, either yourself or a character, that actually uses a machine that simulates the past. So there's a small, very important twist here for the narrative. But basically, when you play the game, you go through different time periods. So we released Assassin's Creed 1 in 2007. That was the first game that we did. Throughout time, what we did is play with many time periods. So the Third Crusade, the Italian Renaissance, the colonial era in the 18th century. We talked about slavery, about the American Revolution. We moved on to recreate the French Revolution in Paris, then the Industrial Revolution in London. Last year, we released a game that was set in ancient Egypt at the time of Cleopatra. And just last week, actually, we released our latest game, which is set in the Peloponnesian War in ancient Greece. So every time we go from a very small game, and now we're getting bigger and bigger. I mean, the first Assassin's Creed were basically like a bunch of blocks with about 15 people on screen. And now you have thousands of people on screen. You have full-scale reproductions, so it's quite impressive. But the amount of work that has to be done is also very impressive. So how do we do this? Assassin's Creed games are made throughout a time span of about 3 to 4 years. So we come up with a small team at first of basically directors, people that will give the direction to what the game is going to be ultimately look like. And so they do research. They look at movies, videos, TV series, books, novels, everything that's easily accessible, actually. So they get a good sense, a first good glimpse of the kind of time period that they want to talk about. I mean, obviously, the creative director at first usually doesn't know everything about Queen Cleopatra or every obscure character that you will never read about in most of the popular items that talk about history. Through time, we work with experts, so I myself work within the team, but I don't only do research, but the part of my work is to help the team get access to the tools to do the research. So defining what are the digital libraries that they can use for every game, for instance. So what are the good sources that they can use readily? We have to imagine that when we make an Assassin's Creed game, there are hundreds of people working at the same time, and they're not waiting after me, especially not after me, because they know that I might tell them not to do something. So they're working, they have to do their research and carry on and create things. So it's really important to find readily accessible tools. And obviously, a lot of the numeric libraries that are out there right now are so interesting. for companies like us. I mean, it's because scientists and heritage companies or societies do research and publish that we can actually get access to that. Otherwise, it's so complex as a private company to contact everyone, have them to sign NDAs, waiting for the lawyers to say yes or no, and then actually get the information. By that time, it's too late. So anyhow, we work with experts within every game that we create. So let's say an example for ancient Egypt, we had experts to help us with archaeology, so to reproduce sites that are over 2,000 years old, that have disappeared totally sometimes. We reproduce the language, we try to reproduce the music. Sometimes we even went as far as reproducing real hieroglyphs or create actually new ones. So we try to work with community experts whenever that's possible for the same reasons that we talk about history. History is sensitive. It's really important for us to make sure that whenever it's possible, we get access to the cultures, to the people of the cultures that we are talking about, especially if it's something that's very close or very sensitive. So in this case, and you can see right now is when we were discussing with the Ghanaian Gehaga Society, so you might know them as the Mohawks. We had many consultants from the society, and actually, in the end, they were super happy about the outcome of the game, about the characters, about the way that their society was portrayed. So that's very important for us. We work with weapons experts. A game like Assassin's Creed is about basically discovering, stabbing, and killing people. So it's really important that the team understands how to do it properly with the right tools. And we still look at what history fans do also, because it makes it very visible for the team. Sorry. So we do go on sites whenever that's possible. We do sometimes look very high profile, so that's quite complex. But whenever it's possible, here's the battles of Lexington and Concord near Boston, so that we brought the team to have them to film, to look at what it feels like to be in guerrilla warfare in the 18th century, to understand what are the muskets, that they're not sniper rifles, they're used in a proper way. So things like that. One very funny thing with Assassin's Creed is I don't think we ever anticipated the success it has. It still has today. We didn't anticipate also the reaction from the fans. So sometimes it's really fun for us to do that. But last year when we announced Assassin's Creed at E3, which is a digital conference that takes place in Los Angeles in the summer, we had both the creative director and the game director speaking on a huge stage like this, with a huge paper wall in the back, and we actually created new hieroglyphs to hide the message. I don't know, maybe you know, but ancient Egypt language is pretty much dead now. By this time, most people cannot read hieroglyphs. Within 24 hours, fans, after we released the paper wall, have started to try to decipher the wallpaper. So, on the first day, they had already some messages that were out there. And then, after 4 months, because they couldn't get everything, a student in archaeology in Australia actually went much further and tried to really get the whole sense out of it. And that was actually like 2 weeks after the game was released. So you can see here, it triggers something in the community that's very strong, just because they know that they'll have fun by stabbing people. It's incredible. I just want to give you some examples of how we can deconstruct some of the views that we have in the game. This is from Assassin's Creed 3 back in 2012. I'm pretty sure you recognize Wall Street from its appearance. You know? That's a whole problem. When most of the things that we try to show in the games have disappeared or totally different, or we're very, we have to rely a lot on archival interpretation. But in a case like this one, it was a challenge, but the most complex one. So we could use some of the archaeology from some of the architecture from Amsterdam, because that was part of the city that was old Amsterdam in New York. We could use some of the lithographs from Trinity Church, the actual Trinity Church that replaced that one, that burned during the American Revolution, is actually the still standing Trinity Church today. On the top right, it's the old city house, which has a model in the actual city house in New York, so that's useful. We look at the clothing, or sometimes at historic sites, like in the lower left corner here is Colonial Williamsburg in Virginia. So it's really interesting for me, for the team, to be able to use all of this information that's really accessible. All right, quick quiz. Which is which? I'll give you some seconds to think about it. It's pretty nice to have such a huge monitor here so you can see all the details and maybe you'll be able to have the good answer. All right, so if you think on your left, this is the real Saint-Chapelle in Paris, please raise your hand. All right, Ben, you're out of this game. Can't play. If you think that the real one is the one on the right of the screen, please raise your hand. Good, we could still fool half of you. So some of the things that you'll notice in the fake one is that we have generic glasswork, and the real one is handmade glasswork. So maybe that's going to help you define which one is which. One is unique, intricately done by an artist. And also, if you look on the right, there's like a walking pole in the air that's used for an assassin to be able actually to air assassinate people and climb over there. But you see, it's again here, we could have tried to reproduce faithfully, but it takes a lot of memory. And this is just one small part of the huge city of Paris that we had to reproduce. So it's not always worth it to go in such detail because it's believable. People feel like they're part of it, and this is the experience. Pretty much the same way that was described earlier in other medias, a video game is really to create an emotion, to have fun and entertain people. One of the challenges that we have is to make history talk through these adventures. So the good thing is we have a scenario. I mean, you get into a storyline that's really close to the main character that you're playing, but it's also about the environment and the universe that you're creating. Sounds are obviously very important. Are there animals, music, and all of these create the immersion. But visually and technically, we're much closer to what is on the right screen, right part of the screen than what is on the left part of the screen. So when we do the research, we'll look at the right proportions of a fortress or a monument, and we'll try to get it right. But the way we're going to adapt it into the game is we're going to play with the heights, the proportions, the way that a street is aligned so that you can actually see the monument, or you can understand where you're situated at in a map. Because when you're a player, you have to understand where your environment around you is. So it's really important to have a lot of visibility on the monuments. But it's also, as I said earlier, about the emotions. So on the right side, you really feel like there's something ongoing in there. And imagine like if you have tragic music around this and a captivating narrative, then it helps you maybe to understand that, I don't know, if there's a war ongoing at that moment, or if the character lost a child, for instance. So you can play with that. And that's really important for the immersion. But that's mostly the most frustrating part for the historian, because of course I want always that we go for the right proportions, but I don't always win. To give you some more ideas and examples of how we play with proportions, when we set to have ancient Egypt as a game, we realized that the kingdom of ancient Egypt was huge, and we couldn't have everything, and there's a lot of sand. And so we set about looking at what were the important historic sites. So on the number one square is the Delta of the Nile, so it's really the source of life in Egypt. You have the city of Alexandria, Memphis, the Fayoum Oasis. Number 4 is the Qattara Depression, very nice natural landscape. Number 3 is the Oasis of Siwa, so a very important historical site, albeit maybe not very much known. And then the square number 2, so far away, is an ancient Greek colony that's called Kihene, or Cyrene, that is in modern-day Libya. But there's quite a distance between them. So we just cheated a little bit with the distances. We merged all of these together. And we set to make it work into the game engine, because everything that we do is rendered real time, so it has to work. So this pretty much sets a map that we can use, and then we understand where we're going to have different activities, or make sure that the players will have a reason to go everywhere also and see all of these unique locations. We study a lot of the biomes, the natural landscapes. We create maps where we try to understand what are the volumes, the heights, the lows. So again, to create a sense of uniqueness to all different places that the players will go to. And this is the result of the map, basically. So when you play, and we're gonna play, you'll notice that some things are off. Like you cannot see usually the lighthouse of Alexandria from the pyramids, but in the game it's important because again, you want the character to understand where the lighthouse is, so you know, oh, this is Alexandria. So it's just cheating a little bit. Every game is different. Every game has a new history challenge, working with different and fragmentary materials. We haven't set our games much into time periods that could use photography, so we have to rely on other sources, written sources, interpretation, so it's always a big challenge. Sometimes places like Boston are totally different today. It used to be almost an island with tidal waves, and today you can barely see the shoreline from the city. So we do work with archaeologists whenever that's possible. Here are some examples where we work with Jean-Claude Durand, who was at first in the constitution and heritage of Colosseums, Greco-Roman Colosseums, and then he actually spent his whole life in Egypt afterwards, trying to repair sites and show plans so that people could understand what were the repairs that they were going to do. So we worked with him for a game on ancient Egypt, very important because he could interpret with water paintings all of these archaeology reports that we needed to become very visual for the team. But it's not only about buildings, obviously it's about having a very living world. So some of the examples here from the French Revolution in Assassin's Creed Unity back in 2014. It's just having a lot of people carrying on with jobs, activities. They're not centered around the character, they're focused on what they have to do in their universe. So obviously the more we have intelligent AI, the more it's believable, otherwise they just walk, or they don't really, it doesn't look very authentic. But this is really to fill in the universe. They're not exactly meant to be looked at precisely. Most of the time the camera of the player also, it's focused on the player. It's not focused on them exactly. So, and why I'm saying this is that when I'm showing videos like this, you'll notice that sometimes it's missing some water, sometimes it's missing some special effects because it wasn't meant to be filmed like this. It's just part of the environment that you don't realize is there. But this is the work that we have to do. We mocap, we have actors, we do the research. We try to come up with all the technical constraints. So imagine we did reproduce mummification in Assassin's Creed Origins. Mummification takes place from a time span of between 40 and 70 days, and we had to express it into a time of a few seconds, which is the amount of time that the player might see it because he's running after someone. And also there are a lot of steps, manipulation, and that's very complex. Again, a lot of efforts that might be not seen by the players, so we have to come up with solutions. So mummification steps, we just narrow it down to some of the steps, and they all happen at once. All right, now this being said, we've been making Assassin's Creed games since 2007, and last February, we launched what we call the Discovery Tour by Assassin's Creed Ancient Egypt, in this case. So, what is that? It's basically that, and sorry for the bright light here, the goal is just to keep you awake in the middle of the presentation. So we used to have the Animus database that was an encyclopedia embedded into the game. So if you went into the front of a monument, you met a historical character, the goal was to give you some information. But that was set into the narrative of the game, so it was very short, and not a lot of people were actually using it. But we thought it was very intelligent and clever, and it really was a hard project to do. And we thought, like, how can we make this better? So we said, all right, let's make another product, a different product, where people can learn about ancient Egypt in a separate way than from the original game. So don't get me wrong, I think a lot of people get to understand history because they played Assassin's Creed, because they've seen things that they would never see elsewhere. But a lot of complex things cannot be said through the medium of the game itself. It's not a history lesson. So we wanted to create this experience that would be complementary or unique also for anyone that's interested in history. We wanted to make it accessible, so removing the conflicts, the time pressure, for instance, but still allowing to go everywhere on the map and visit all the different buildings, for instance, and meet everyone that's there. In addition to that, the goal that we had was to allow people to learn a little bit more about game development and understand some of the things that I just said earlier. So what are the constraints that we have in creating a game like this? So we're not trying to tell alternative history. It's just that we have to adapt it to the constraints of the game. All right, enough talking. Let's play a little bit. So, I just opened Uplay. This is running on a PC. And the Discovery Tour was actually launched last February. It was given for free to Assassin's Creed Origins game owners. So actually, we didn't ask them for their permission. We installed it on their game console. So it was a free game, plus I'll do the hard work for them. So it's pretty interesting. But we also released a standalone version that is running on computer, and the price range is much different. I think right now in the UK it's maybe £10, I'm not sure, for the full game. And it's replayable over and over. Don't worry, it's in French right now, but it's going to get into English. I think we actually have, I think, up to 9 languages, 12 languages. Some of them are fully localized, some of them are subtitled. So I think we have Mandarin and traditional, Chinese, Korean, and our subtitle, and then a lot of the languages are fully localized. All right, so let's just open the menu. Pretty simple interface, Discovery Tour. All right, let's start. And why I'm showing you this is that a lot of people are afraid to play a video game, and because it's a controller and everything. And the goal with this project is that schools could use it, museums could use it very easily, anyone basically. All right, so that's where I left last time. I'm playing right now with Shadia. And what is the Discovery Tour? Is basically you have interactions like this one, and you have audio guided tours that are taking place in the digital world. So we know that the tour is going to take about 6 minutes on average to complete. You know what it's about, and all you have to do is press start for the tour.
Agriculture and seasons.
So you have a slide on the ground. I'm free to go around wherever I want. I'm sorry if I'm getting you sick. And you can go all around. There's always, that the user interface that will tell you where the next station is at, so you don't have to worry. And basically, you just follow the path if you want to. And then you get to the stations.
While crops were cultivated in different oases around the desert, most of the arable lands were near the Nile. 2 types of cereal grain were cultivated, barley and an ancient wheat known as emmer. These 2 key ingredients contributed in establishing bread and beer as the staple of the Egyptian diet and the basis of its economy.
Thank you. So, if you want, you can always, if there's a resource image available, you can put it on full screen. In this case, you know where it's located at, where it comes from, what's the datation of the object. So the goal of this for us is to show a little bit some of the sources that inspired us. Right now in the Discovery Tour, we have 600 images from museums and libraries. I wish we could have even more, but it's always a bit hard to put in there. Because what we want to do is create a flow that is natural, that is not too intrusive. All right, let's end. I'm tired of playing with Shadia. Maybe let's be Julius Caesar instead. So we have 25 different avatars: kids, Greeks, Egyptians, women, and some historic characters that you can interact with.
The Ptolemaic era created an agricultural revolution with the introduction of advanced agricultural techniques and new grain types such as rice, durum wheat, and pearl millet. The resulting agricultural mass production greatly increased the economy of ancient Egypt. It also prompted the development of storage and transportation, allowing long-distance trade with other regions.
So we have about over 35 different camera sets that will also help you to focus on the things that we want to show you. There's our eagle. Let's just use it. So I mentioned that we did quite a large map. So right now what we see in the distance, we see the city of Memphis. There we've got some pyramids, more pyramids. So here is Giza. If you want with the eagle, you can just go everywhere as much as you like, and then whenever you want, you can come back to the character. Or if you feel like it, you're like, oh, I actually want to go there and see that. So you just fast travel, basically. It asks you, do you want to quit the actual tour? Like, yeah, of course, I can quit. You can come back whenever you want. There's no pressure. So we just got here, and then if we want, we can engage in this tour, or we can just skip and let's go. Maybe we could go to Alexandria instead, for instance. So either we can open the map in the menu like this one, where all the blue icons are actually tour starters. Let's go maybe to the Great Library of Alexandria. Or if I don't want to use this option, I can also use the tours here where it tells me what's available by subject. I can also look into the passport page, so golden icons represent a tour that has been completed. Black icons like this one that we were just doing represent an on-progress tour. Or the other ones that are tours that we haven't started yet. So there's the Great Library of Alexandria. All right, you can still fast travel from the menu if you want, so there are many ways to actually get to that subject. I'll wrap up quickly on this and move on to other things. I think it might get the point here a little bit, but here's the Great Library of Alexandria. I've always wanted to see it. If you speak Koine Greek, maybe you get a glimpse of what they're saying. And I'll cut it from here because I want to keep it. I want to keep the surprise a little bit. Let's go back to the presentation, just if you allow me. This is available for purchase online. It's there. It takes a couple of minutes to download. But the hard part is that it does require either a console or a computer that is strong enough to run it. That is one of the challenges that I hope we can tackle in the future. Making a Discovery Tour was a very long-term project. We wanted to do it right. So we did went into a lot of conferences, meet a lot of people from museums, from the teaching sector, because we wanted to please our fans, but we also wanted to make sure that this was actually accessible outside of the fandom. So we were very lucky that there are a lot of academic people that are interested in what we do. One of them is he's a professor of methodology and history. And so he doesn't play video game, he doesn't really like it at all, actually. But he thinks that it has a very strong power. And so we agreed together to actually conduct a study. So we provided the hardware, he did the study with his team. That was done during the production of the Discovery Tour. So over 300 students in high school level that had participated. They were all volunteers, obviously, for this study. They didn't know they were going to play Assassin's Creed. They just knew that it was something about Ubisoft. So we got there, put the hardware, basically, and they played. And then we measured. So the goal with this is that we took 40 students per school. We asked them, we looked at what they knew, so we asked them for a pre-quiz. They were very bad at it. That was the purpose. We wanted to know if they could learn something new. And most of the things that you can learn in Discovery Tour, if you already know it, then maybe you don't need to go to high school, actually. Then we separated the groups in two, so half of the class would go with a formal lecture with a teacher that would use the same reference images as the Discovery Tour, but nothing else. But traditional teaching, so that's pretty solid, we know it works. And the rest of the students would engage in playing the Discovery Tour. They would play the tour about the Library of Alexandria, and without any guidance. So no help from anyone. They just followed what was on screen. So they pretty much saw the exact same content. And in the end, we would do a post-test so the same test again to know if they understood or retained anything. Whoops, skipped on this. So the results are very, very surprising. We never thought about beating a teacher. That wasn't the goal. The goal is to provide a tool. So we wanted to have a third group where the students work with the teacher and the discovery tour, but that's the next phase of research. But as you can see, the pre-test results were not very good, but the post-test results are very surprising. They almost learned as much with the discovery tour alone. So there is power over there. So more research has to be completed now, but it's very interesting. Quickly wrapping here, some of the other projects that we are being involved with are a lot of partnerships, either with Historia, which is the oldest historic magazine in Europe. We've done 5 special editions with them, where it's not about the game, it's about the historic setting. So we use some of the images from the game, but after that they create articles with historians, so it really merges the two worlds out there, and it's very popular, it can work, and it's fun to create. And very quickly, some few last slides. This is from one of the partnerships that we've done with a museum in Montreal, Pointe-à-Carrière Museum. It's an archaeology museum. They asked us to create 9 different exclusive views for their exhibit that they created about ancient Egypt. So they brought items from all over the world in Montreal. They created that exhibit that is going to travel after that to a lot of different places. They had specific requirements for their exhibit, which wasn't set in the same time period as our game. And for a museum, it was more important for them to be really faithful for accuracy. So it took us a couple of months, but because we had done the discovery tour before that, we knew a little bit more of the pipeline and what we could use. But this is just to give you some ideas of the kind of thing that a company like this can do. But obviously it has to match from the exhibit purpose to what the game we just built. But when we can, we try to plan these things a long time ahead with museums. So it just looks like this very, very quickly. So they sent us some of the mock-ups. We came up with some of the ideas. We suggested some of the subjects. So they printed, for instance, the same material as from the columns of the temple on the columns of the exhibit. So it's all same color. The clothing is interesting. Then we did some of the technical work for them to make sure that it would project the same quality that they were expecting. And this is some pictures from the final results. It's ongoing in Montreal until the end of the month, and it's going to travel for the next couple of years throughout the world. So hopefully that's going to be a good experience. And this is just one example of many opportunities that we try to be part of, we try to create. Hopefully we'll have more occasions of creating more of these exhibits in the future. The sound is still ongoing, I'm sorry. But thank you very, very much for your attention.